Welcome to the Company of Dads podcast, where we explore the sweet, silly, strange, and sublime aspects of being a lead dad in a world where men, who are the go-to parent, aren't always accepted at work, among their friends, or in the community for what they're doing. I'm your host, Paul Sullivan. Our podcast is just one of the many things we produce each week at the Company of Dads. We have various features, including the Lead Dad of the Week. We have our monthly meetups. We have a new resource library for all fathers. The one-stop shop for all of this is our newsletter, The Dad. So sign up today at thecompanyofdad.com/thedad. Today, our guest is Zach Watson, also known as Real Zach Think Share on Instagram. Bit of a mouthful, but it's worth typing it in. He's a former math teacher turned tech salesperson who is now coaching other men to be better husbands and fathers. He is, in his words, and by the pink shirt that he's wearing for those of you watching this on video, a recovering man-child. One through line is his innate ability to communicate important ideas with an often light touch through video. He started doing this when he was a math teacher. Now, a millennial dad of one with a wife, Alyssa, Zach has been creating content aimed at working moms and lead dads to help men realize the mental load of parenting that women often carry. He's doing it in a funny but insightful way, and his work has garnered hundreds of thousands of followers and a burgeoning coaching business. Zach, welcome to the Company of Dads podcast.
Damn, that was a hell of an intro. Thank you.
Hey, welcome, man. When you were a kid, who carried the mental load in your family?
I think my mom did, and she still does. But I think more importantly, because what am I anticipating? Part of your question is like, what influence did I have? Was that I think,
Zach, the way this works, I ask a question, Zach, and then you answer, then you wait for the next question. Okay, this is my podcast, not yours. I'm not on your Instagram page, which is so much.
All right, that's fair. Yeah, my mom definitely did. She held most of the mental load.
What was the setup like between in your family? And did both parents work out of the home? Did you know? Was there a trade-off? You're in your 30s, so this wasn't super long ago. Tell a bit about that upbringing.
Yeah, both my parents worked. My mom was a teacher for 36 years. And actually, this was the thing that I was going to bring up, is that she was the main breadwinner for most of my life. And my dad has had a lot of different jobs, I think, throughout his life, and never really stuck to one career. They're both now coaches at Dean College in Massachusetts. But yeah, she's been the main breadwinner, and I think they're both super involved in my upbringing. From them telling tales of me as a child, infant and toddler, sounded like they were very much like a team effort when it came to managing my puke and diaper training and potty training and all the different things that I had to learn along the way.
Yeah. When did you meet your wife, Alyssa?
2013, we had our 10-year anniversary of dating 2 months ago.
All right. And, so you had a good period in which you were, on your own. You meet Alyssa, you get married. Your daughter is 2.5. As you can tell, I'm very good with simple arithmetic here. So there was a period of time, in which you were, and I look back into my own life, this sort of halcyon period of a married couple doing all kinds of fun things that married couples do. Not that kids aren't fun, but with the freedom of not having kids. Did the conversation of mental load even come up back then, or you just, doing your own careers and enjoying spending time with each other?
It's a great question. I think it did, and I don't know quite how it was articulated. A couple months ago, Alyssa and I were trying to figure out, how do I make my content more palatable to send to the not yet lead dads, but the man children that aren't even willing to say that they're man children or recovering man children. And she's like, back in 2020, before I was pregnant, in 2019, like, I had a hard time talking about this with you, Zach. I was like, damn, called out. But
you're not putting that on your Instagram page, right? I don't want that. I don't want that on your Instagram page. I don't want to know that you were flawed at some point.
Yeah, I think the fact that that I was at one point one of those people that was defensive, and it was really hard to hear feedback. Was definitely something that I went through. Um, I think there was an article that she had found about mental load or domestic labor that spoke more about its invisibility. Uh, and I don't know if she actually sent it to me. We tried looking back into our text from a couple years ago and couldn't find it, but she remembers seeing it and being like, "Oh, I wish Zach could understand this," and was scared to share it with me.
Mm.
And I think it
Did you
just
did you
speaks
ask
to,
her why? Did you ever ask her why she was scared to share it with you?
I think she was mostly afraid that I was going to get defensive and like feel attacked about it. We don't know what the actual article was for sure, but it was pretty much validating a lot of the experience that she had in the household around managing a lot of the things that go on. Um, I think she probably close to 90% of the mental load that she's owned throughout a lot of our marriage together. Even when we would talk about our wedding, I think a lot of guys take a step back and let, their wives manage the wedding. And I always remember being proud of the fact that like I had three preferences that I articulated, and one is I wanted cupcakes, I wanted bow ties, and I wanted the color purple. And I got those things, and it was funny how for a while I was so proud of that. I was like, yeah, like I had a say in my marriage and in the wedding itself. And like looking back, there were so many things I could have stepped in. I could have looked for so much more mental load that I could have put onto my plate. I think there was a lot of preference that she wanted to own. And I think there was also a lot that I could have I could have found easier ways to be a part of that.
I love this image, Zach, because you are a recovering man child. You've seen the error of your ways, but I have this vision of you in full man child mode, being like, cupcakes, purple, bow tie.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
good choices, I think.
they're solid choices. I mean, a cupcake is, and particularly, now that you have a daughter, a cupcake is probably the best delivery vehicle for a sweet treat. You don't have to cut it. You don't need a fork. You can just bite into it. It's kind of like the way a hot dog delivers, relish and mustard to our system. It's just sort of optimally designed.
Mm.
What was the moment in your marriage, in your life, when you started thinking differently about, not just, division of labor, but actually ownership of labor within your family, within your home?
I think the a huge defining moment for me was when I read the Fair Play book. I had already been making videos talking about being a father. I already had a bit of an audience on TikTok, and over that year, I was slowly discovering how much more there was to motherhood and there was to parenting and partnering that I was not owning. And I was talking about being on parental leave, and I took 3 months of paternity leave, and a lot of people were really amazed by the amount of time that I was putting in and how much I was trying to be equitable in that time. And I thought I was the shit. Like I thought I was carrying a huge load of parenthood that a lot of other guys were. And I saw myself above a lot of other guys. And it wasn't until the following summer in 2022 that a couple other mom creators that I followed and like felt like colleagues with, they said, yeah, you should really consider reading Fair Play. They didn't, because I think the way that I talked, they would not have thought that I needed help in that area, but I read it and did like kind of pretty real time reflections. I would read a chapter and jump onto TikTok and make a video about it. And in that time, I remember thinking how hard it was to swallow a couple of the ideas in there, like all time is equal, and that even if you're not getting paid for it, like there's some sacrifice happening, like there's always prioritization happening. I think I think fair play is the most replicatable thing that I went through that like all guys could experience.
For listeners who are wondering, what are we talking about? Fair play. It is not a video game. It is not a yoga retreat. Fair play is a remarkable book written by Eve Rodsky. Eve Rodsky is a friend of mine. She's an advisor at a company of dads. She's a Harvard trained attorney who was thinking about a lot of things in her own life with her husband, with her three kids, and the book has a really gripping intro in which she's in her car and gets a text from her husband saying, "You didn't get the blueberries," and she loses it. People are like, "Why the hell are you losing it over blueberries?" And the term that Zach and I have been talking about, mental load, is one that she is really popularized. And that was, she was, wildly successful in her career. Her husband was very successful in his career, but she was carrying the mental load of the house and all the other of the kids and everything else. And it spawned a movement. It spawned coaching. I know, Zach, you're certified as a fair play coach.
Mhm.
When you were going through that and reading the book, did your wife Alyssa read it at the same time? I know you said you're making some videos, but were you discussing some of the things? Because at the crux of the book is it's very actionable, a lot of tips, but Eve has also created a series of cards so you can sort of gamify the discussions, so that people can have more robust conversations. Is that what you and Alyssa were doing, or you were meditating more of it, on your own?
Yeah, so fun fact, she still hasn't read the book. Um, she's kind of relied on my understanding of it to have it be implemented into our lives. Um,
So she's trusting you because the book is called Fair Play, that you'll be fair and not like skew things. Like, no, no, no. It says here,
yeah,
the recovering man child needs to sleep until 10 on Sundays. No.
yeah. I mean, I think she's seen a significant amount of changes with it. So the cards, I think a lot of people have a misconception that it's a card game. I see it more of as like a conversation starter and structure.
Mm.
Uh, we've done a couple like sessions of using the cards to like get that conversation kicked off. I remember the first time we sat down with them. So it's a list of 100 household responsibilities that she recommends that over the time in her research seem to be like a pretty good like spread of the responsibilities. So you identify how many exist in your home, you identify kind of what you guys want to take accountability for, and you fully define the tasks. So like when you sign up for a job offer, right, you read what are the job responsibilities. And in our partnerships, in our parenthood, there's no job requirement section that we read through like I'm going to manage all of the vet appointments and everything around our pets. And there's no job description that talks about like, okay, you have to manage the portal and the login information for that. You have to make sure that their vaccinations are updated, and that when we move to a new town, that you make sure that the rabies shot gets, sent into like the town hall or something. And so I think there's a huge part of, especially when you're finding inequities and there's issues in the house around like typically mom being upset that dad is not carrying his fair share. It's an opportunity to really define what fair share looks like, to define what the load is on a given responsibility. So if he's mowing the lawn, he's like, yeah, I own all the lawn care, all the outdoor, and she's owning all the laundry. It can be really easy and a bit too simple to say, oh, she has one chore, he has one chore. But let's look at the frequency. Let's look at the amount of thinking that's required. Um, Lawn care, you have to keep an eye on it. Maybe you just have a weekly cadence period. Sometimes you're a little bit more paying attention to how long the grass grows. If it rains extra, you have to wait an extra day to do it. Laundry, there's a good amount too, and probably a significant amount more. There's a higher frequency. The domestic labor itself is just a larger amount, but there's also more thinking like, oh, one of our kids has a thing on Thursday, and we need to make sure that the laundry is done in time for that.
Mm.
And we have to there's a two-step process to make sure that it actually makes it to the dryer, and we don't have to rewash the clothes ahead of time. So that conversation really dives deeper into what are the responsibilities that are causing us the biggest problems. We identified dishes at night were the first one we really attacked, that in trash. They're really simple. I was doing it the majority of the time, but she was still owning a ton of the mental load of it. So we much further defined what it looks like to have like a clean kitchen at night once the dishes are done, and the frequency and way that we go about unloading the trash. And does it mean that we put it out on the porch right outside of our door? Or does it mean I carry it all the way down? If there's snow on the ground, do I get a free pass and I get 24 hours to get it to the trash? Um, if we just had a large meal where we used 5 extra pots and pans and the baby just went to sleep and I know I can be kind of loud with that, do I get an extra 12 hours to clean those? So having a lot of those minute conversations that bring up upsets because we have expectations of each other around how it should be done, but we never talk about it. And so that's a huge part of what I coach families to have that conversation for.
One of the things we talk about at the company dads is we sort of equate resentment in a relationship to the dust that accumulates under your couch. You don't really know
Mhm.
it's there until you either buy a new couch or you move, and then you say, "Oh my goodness, this is disgusting. How did there get to be so much dust under my
Mm.
couch?" And as I say, most people um, don't marry a sociopath, or they don't marry and then have children with a sociopath. They may marry him and then divorce a sociopath. So people are inherently good. You're in love, and then things just build up over the years. There's sort of an accretion of dust. There's accretion of resentment in a relationship. You guys got to this, pretty early on in your marriage. But when you think about your coaching and the men that you're working with who've gone perhaps further along, perhaps are sensing the resentment, perhaps are not, owning the mental load of some pretty, banal but frequent and necessary task in their house. How do you begin that coaching process with them to sort of, unwind all these things that they think surely they think they were doing their fair share, but turns out they weren't really. So how do you begin that process?
So at, within your question, you kind of did step one, which is identifying what is like one of those things that keeps coming up, that keeps building resentment. Where is the dust that we want to identify first? And I think it's either creating direct arguments, or it's like one of those moments where the guy is finding himself saying, God, I can never get this right. She's just always going to critique it. So I think those are like two markers that you can say, are we continuously getting in arguments? Are we getting passive aggressive around that thing? Like, are we leaving an extra dish out after the dishwasher's been filled to like piss the other one off? Like, identifying the first one, and then from there talking about who is currently doing 51 or more percent of it. So with dishes for us, we recognized I was probably doing 70 to 80% of it, and she was either reminding or asking me to do it often. And so I said, let's stop. The actual of the amount of her asking me to do it, especially when I was about to do it, was so painful to me because I was like, God damn. Like, I was gonna go do the dishes. Now I feel like I don't even want to do it because you asked me to do it, because I now no longer feel like I'm doing it with free will. And so having that conversation up front saying like, I want to own 100% of it. So you never ask me again. You never remind me again. And we're really clear about what it looks like when it's done. So choosing it, and then identifying what percent is already there, and then defining what 100% looks like. So for dishes with us, it looked like having everything in the dishwasher. If they're big pots and pans that don't fit in there, they're cleaned. If it's the cast iron pan, then we are seasoning it and making sure there's no water in it left. With the sink, making sure it gets a really quick scrub, making sure there's no food left in the little net. So it's getting really granular about like what a finished job looks like, so that like you could, like a teacher could like grade it on a rubric almost. Because I think when we have that granular level of detail that we both agreed on, then it gets much easier to not be resentful to each other, because we can also see and identify, yeah, actually, you're right. I didn't do 100%. And I know that because we talked about it, rather than being held accountable to something that we never talked about. And I think just when people are starting to see a little bit of momentum with one responsibility in the house, we start to see a lot of changes, because what happens once they start even identifying and giving themselves permission, hey, I'm going to fail this week at least once, at least. Like when I started taking over, just setting up the security system at home. So there's three doors we have to keep locked, and then you swipe it, the little tablet in our kitchen, and then it locks the house and arms it. Um, I knew I was going to forget at least once for that first week that I said it. I said, in 7 days, let's talk about it again. And let's see, like, where did I fail? Why did I fail? Are there any other things we want to add to this responsibility? Um, we recognize that if there's a box sitting in front of it, I'm going to forget. I also need to use habit stacking from James Clear's Atomic Habits. The moment that I click the dishwasher start button, right after that, I go do the locks. Our dog, we would let go out to pee one more time and then bring her back in, then lock the doors and set it up. So I think giving ourselves permission to fail is what our partners that are annoyed with us are not giving us. But once they see momentum and you have the structure of a weekly conversation about these types of things, I think you start giving each other more of the benefit of the doubt.
You know,
So, yeah,
I can hear, listeners saying, okay, I get what he's saying, but man, this is a lot of work. I'm at work during the day. My wife's at work during the day. Now we have to come home and have a conversation about this task that we have to do. For those who are skeptical, why is it worth it? Or how long does it take to get these things in place? I mean, once you've figured out this routine, are you doing it again and again? So talk about the time commitment that's involved.
yeah. I'm going to talk a little bit about the time commitment as well as the emotional commitment, is the fact that I think you're already doing the work either way. The question is, where do you want to do the work? Do you want to do the work of doing your job, getting home, walking on eggshells, making sure you don't accidentally piss off your partner because didn't do something the way that they expect, and be less intimate and just things are a little bit harder and a little bit more passive and less together? Or do you want to have an extra time commitment of 45 to 60 minutes once a week to talk about the calendar and one of the responsibilities you guys are working on, and all of the friction of each of those moments throughout the 168 hours of your week goes a little bit smoother? Um, I've found personally that the less friction throughout the week is far better, in having the 45 to 60 minutes, I think, a week. That's one of the top things that I hold my guys accountable to when they sign up for Mental Load Mastery. We talk about wins every week. We go through the Fair Play book and have a semi-philosophical conversation about the book and what it's presenting. And then I help them identify we call it the boring meeting, um, because it used to be the expectations or relationship meeting just felt really heavy. So we decided to be sarcastic about it and call it, well, it's the boring meeting. We're going to talk about dishes. We're going to talk about why Zach didn't set the security alarm last night. We're going to talk about the poop left over in our backyard from our dog, and what frequency do we want to be cleaning that up. So every week you're having that conversation, you're getting iterative, and I think over time you're going to start talking about more emotional things too. So I think I recently had a guy say that they had the best week of their marriage, that they've been married 9 years, after being 5 weeks into the program. And the huge reason for it was because they were having those weekly conversations where I'm coaching them to bring the agenda. So they're holding the mental load of it. And their wife shows up and is kind of presented with more things rather than having to bring it all herself. Is they also found opportunities to talk about what Eve calls unicorn space, which is, I think, the simplest way to put it. It's the thing you talk about at an adult dinner party when you're not talking about kids or work. It's like, what's that thing that you're get excited about? Probably a little bit more exciting or passionate about than a hobby, or maybe sports could be it. I think for a lot of guys, sports are a bit more of a hobby, but for me, for a while, it was this content creation. My unicorn space has now become my job.
It makes me want to ask this question, because look, I buy into this. I think what you're doing is great, but to simplify it for the listener, there's a video you did. I don't know how long ago it was, but I was watching it, and it's so good. And it's essentially the fictional spouse saying, "Hey Zach, what do you want for dinner?" And your answer at first is, "I don't know. What do you want?" Which is an answer that so many people that I've given, that so many people give, because you think in saying, "I don't know what you want," you're being more magnanimous. You're saying, "Okay, it's up to you, whatever you want." But tell what that is really doing, and what a better response to that question that we all get might be.
Yeah. And I think one of the videos you might be referring to is I said that I think the traditional one that a lot of us, I think millennials, heard from our uncles and aunts on our wedding day, of happy wife, happy life, uh, creates a really terrible culture of mental load. And what that looks like is it starts out really cute and romantic. And like, what restaurant do you want to go to? I'll go wherever you want. I will be an amoeba and we will go to, I hate sushi, but we will eat sushi if that's what your heart desires. And over time, I think it starts as you get to choose, and slowly we get this like learned helplessness of, okay, it's not that you get to choose, but you have to choose. And so the requirement of them to choose, the requirement of them to be the final decision maker starts to weigh. And the transition period of the get to choose versus have to choose, it's hard to say when that line occurs. And I think that's one of the huge traps we all fall into. Um, and I think, I mean, I made a video recently with Kristen Bell, talking about like
Who, who,
where should we
who's
eat for
she? Who's
breakfast?
she?
Uh, she, when if I didn't know
Frozen,
that
man.
she was,
Anybody who has a daughter, Frozen. She's Anna from Frozen. Anna.
yeah. Oh, I guess you're right. Our 2.5-year-old hasn't gotten into Frozen yet, but I'm sure she will because we
She will.
sing "Want to Build a Snowman" more times than I can admit.
And that video is remarkable because it illustrates what you're saying. So, Wani, people can watch on Instagram, but walk through the basic premise of the conversation that you have
Yeah.
with.
So it started just like the example you gave of like, what do you want to have to eat? Oh, I don't care. What do you want? And we kind of throw the ball back and forth to each other a couple times. And she's like, no, you don't get it. You need to choose for me. And then she goes, we crafted together like almost like a rant of like all the things she's already had to choose this morning. And she is constantly thinking about in the upcoming weeks of like all these domestic labor, family decisions that are falling on her, and not necessarily to the fault of anyone else necessarily, but have just been weighing on her. And so making one more decision about where to go get brunch is just a bit too much. And so she's really asking for me as the friend to go get brunch with, like, where do you want to go? Can you please? It would make so much difference to me if you could make this decision rather than adding one more to my plate.
And I don't want to give away the ending, but it was a surprise ending. I'll be honest with you. Because in the end, you say waffles and mimosa. And like my kids, I was like, where's the protein? Like, if you don't have some protein, you're just going to be crabby afterwards. Because your one mimosa leads to two, and all you got are the carbs, and you put syrup. Anyway, Zach, uh, this has been remarkable talking to the Company Dads podcast. I want to ask you this question though. You've had this is your third career, two really interesting careers so far. You started off as a math teacher.
Fourth,
You fourth? What was the first one?
the first one was I was a software developer for 2 years, and I went
Your
to
software,
college for engineering.
software developer. Then you were a math teacher. You started making some content as a math teacher. Then you weren't went and worked in essentially tech sales, and now you've gone off on your own
Mhm.
to create this coaching program. Why was it? A lot of people would read Eve's book that apply to their lives. Maybe they'd talk to their friends about it. What was it that so moved you about fair play and everything that we talk about on mental load? What was it so moved you that said, you know what? I'm gonna take a leap. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna make, as you said, what was your unicorn space? What was the thing that you enjoyed doing? I'm gonna make this my career, and by extension, help other people. Now, obviously, that's something teachers try to do. They're trying to teach kids how to
Mm.
learn math, whatever you're teaching them. But what was it that made you think, okay, I want to go? I believe so deeply in this. I believe this is so important for my generation of dads and couples that I'm going to go, make this my career.
Part of it was, I think it made sense. I know that I just thoroughly, I know certainly there's an ego aspect to it where it's exciting that right now I can post something on Instagram and 30,000 people are going to see it. It's hard to visualize that amount. It's like filling multiple Gillette stadiums, which blows my mind a bit
If
on
you were
some
Taylor
videos.
Swift, if you were Taylor Swift, you'd have no problem imagining that many
Yeah.
people.
Um, but I think it was about a year ago. I think probably 13 or 14 months ago, I made my first video of the mental load series, which I'm on episode one or part 160 right now. And when I started talking about it, the second one I ever made is at like 6.4 million on TikTok. And I was like, "Oh, wow, why do they care so much about this? I kind of got it, but not fully." And then, as any average content creator would, they would see, oh, well, that worked. I should do something similar to that. So then I probably did 10 parts in the next like 7 days, and all of those did pretty well. And when I say pretty well, they got viewership, they got engagement, they were sharing it with people, and people were saying, I've never heard it talked about quite like this. And so I just kept going and I kept sharing moments of my own life where I was noticing that I was adding mental load for my wife. And the first one was just me. We were about to put our kid down to nap, and I said, should we do water or milk?" And I was just like, oh, I probably could have chosen that and just said, hey, I'm thinking we should do milk for X, Y, and Z reason. Feel free to push back on that. I'm not committed to milk, but like, here's the choice. Um, and just like those minute items that I started sharing. And then over time, people are saying, like, you need programming. We need help with this. We really need help with this, Zach. And I started taking it seriously. I hired a coach to help me because people just found, I think as a math teacher, when you make thousands of examples of how to do y equals mx plus b, you're like, they just need practice problems. They need to keep practicing. And as I kept making examples, I was like, I'm making practice problems for people to see this in their own life. And I think a lot of guys that have a hard time hearing it because it feels like an attack. I tried to make it palatable and pointing out this is where I'm screwing up. Um, I'm wondering if you are too, but if you are, I'm not going to call you out. I'm just going to call myself out, and this is the reflection on that. And so as time went on, I think I I started offering one-on-one coaching in July, and I exploded my brain when someone actually signed up for it. Like I didn't necessarily see the value in it, and then people kept signing up. And then in October, I made a video just inviting people to book a call. Videos probably get about 6 million views off multiple platforms. And at some point, I was like, well, I can't do my day job and accept all these one-on-one clients. It just doesn't work. Um, Alyssa made a sacrifice to do the childcare from 5 to 9 p.m. through the weekdays from since the fall, so that I could have those calls. And I think I've had about 130 initial calls since then, and I realized I need group programming. I couldn't meet the demand anymore one-on-one. And at some point, I was walking away from those group sessions with the guys, feeling like I was doing, this feels almost cheesy, what I was meant to do, but just really feeling like I was providing a safe space for them to knock around ideas and try new things that they hadn't. And walking away from those sessions feeling like I've really made a difference in someone's day, in their marriage, and their life, instead of selling them an extra $1,000 worth of software licenses, just made a lot of sense. And I think over the past 3 months of just seeing how much people want it and need it, and the results that I'm finding that they're getting after even just a couple weeks, yeah, I would like to be doing this on a larger scale with more people. I would love to make it more affordable. Right now, just like for my capacity as a one-man show, I just added our friend John as a also a coach to help me manage some of those groups, and so I can offer more time blocks. I'm not sure. Did I answer your question?
You did. And this is a great conversation. Zach Watson, also known as the real Zach Think Share. Check him out. Thank you so much for being my guest today on the Company of Dads podcast.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Company of Dads podcast. I also want to thank the people who make this podcast and everything else that we do at the Company of Dads possible. Helder Mira, who is our audio producer. Lindsay Decker, who handles all of our social media. Terry Brennan, who's helping us with the newsletter and audience acquisition. Emily Servin, who is our web maestro. And of course, Evan Roosevelt, who is working side by side with me in many of the things that we do here at the Company of Dads. It's a great team, and we're just trying to bring you the best in fatherhood. Remember, the one-stop shop for everything is our newsletter, The Dad. Sign up at thecompanyofdads.com/thedad. Thank you again for listening.